babe, wanna leave this town. I'm saying, whatever, if you wanna go, I'm down. Darling, we'll make the biggest thing.
Hey there, fellow travelers.
And welcome to She's Got Baggage, where we dive into all the moments of travel, the good, the bad, the weird, the confusing, and every fascinating nuance along the way. I'm Abby.
And I'm Katy.
And together, we're your travel gal pals, here to share the full spectrum of our experiences from life beyond borders.
So grab a seat and get ready to join us as we explore the diverse tapestry of travel, from exhilarating highs to the challenging lows and everything in between.
This is your final boarding call. Thanks for joining us on today's adventure.
Hello, travelers, and welcome back to She's Got Baggage. I'm Katy.
And I'm Abby. Thanks for coming back to continue to unpack with us. Although we still consider ourselves to be baby podcasters, this journey has already proven to be a fun one. We've had a wonderful time reflecting on the moments abroad that have brought us up to today.
That's right, Abby. It's been quite the journey. We have been learning so much as we go, and I've really enjoyed talking about our old ways, and I hope you've enjoyed hearing about some of our old days that were kind of the behind-the-scenes look into our life abroad. We hope that this look behind the curtain will inspire others to take similar risks or any risks in their own lives.
And for those of you who are already out in the world living this lifestyle, we see you. And this lifestyle is a mixture of Insta-worthy adventures, some unique tribulations. We do hope that this podcast resonates with you and inspires you to reflect on your own journeys. If this sounds like you, please do reach out to us. We love hearing from you and look forward to featuring the fascinating stories from the lives that y'all are living.
If you have a story that will confuse, inspire, or motivate, please let us know so we can tell it together. Our community is the reason we're doing this, so please join in the adventure with us.
Our community is everything indeed, and there was never a time when the international community came together more than during COVID.
That's right. So whether it was getting through lockdown together by cooking for each other or virtual dance parties, we made it through because of each other.
We definitely did, and we welcome our listeners to join us for a special two-part series where we talk about the unusual ways that Katy and I got through COVID times. We try to keep these episodes around the 35-minute mark or so, but heads up, this one might run a little long because we've got a lot to unpack.
That's right. Today, we're actually going to take a one-way trip to visit Abby in India. Coming along for the ride is our dear friend Megan, who's calling in today from the States.
Megan is a bit of a wellness guru. She is an experienced yoga teacher, meditation guide, master Reiki healer, motivational speaker, and all-around amazing woman and friend that anyone would be privileged to know. So if you're interested in learning more about Megan and all of the amazing gifts that she has to offer, please check out her bio on our website, she'sgotbaggagepodcast.com, and you can also link up with Megan directly on her website, themegthing.com.
So please welcome Megan.
Hi, girl.
Hi, Megan.
I'm so excited to be here today. I've been hearing about the podcast for a little while now, and I'm really appreciative that you have me on today. And Katy, it's so nice to virtually meet you. I know that we've chatted before. Finally. So thanks, girls, for having me.
So it's our honor, honestly. Megan, so are you ready to do this? Are you ready to take a trip down memory lane and talk about the absolute cluster that was COVID in India?
Oh, absolutely. It was one of my favorite times in life. I am so excited to share about it.
It's so funny to say.
It is. It's a weird thing to say, but it's true for us.
Well, then why don't we get started from the beginning? And you guys can tell me about how you ended up in India in the first place. So let's start with you, Abby.
So before this whole COVID thing kicked off, Pants and I were living in Sri Lanka, and we were at a familiar crossroads that both Katy and I know pretty well by now. We'd been living for about 8 months in a small beach town in Sri Lanka, and I always loved the name. It was Unawatuna. And we really enjoyed our time there, but we felt like it was time to move on. We didn't really know exactly where we wanted to go next. This was around January of 2020, and we'd planned to be in Albania by the end of May or June because Pants's parents were going to be visiting Greece, and Albania was right next door, so maybe we could see them on their trip. So we had this window of about 3 or 4 months where we had nowhere we needed to be. We decided on India as sort of a temporary stop because I had always wanted to dedicate some time to my yoga practice. I wanted to do a yoga teacher training, and I enrolled in a teacher training course in Rishikesh, India. Not so much because I had dreams of becoming a yoga teacher myself, but I'd always really wanted to kind of challenge myself to complete an intensive teacher training to deepen my own personal practice. And I wasn't really sure if Pants would be on board to kind of wait around for me to go do yoga for a month while I completed this training. But I did sort of dangle this carrot that we could buy a motorcycle and he could keep busy with really, really impressive mountain drives while I was working on my training. So that was kind of the story as to how I found myself in India. But Megan, I want you to share with us how you got yourself there.
How did you end up in India?
Well, I really do feel like it's just part of my soul's journey. I had been practicing for a couple of years. I went through a huge transformation in my life where I lost a lot of weight. I started practicing meditation, started practicing yoga, started working on energy healing. And I felt the call. I felt the call to do a teacher training. Wanting to be as authentic as possible, I decided to go to India to do my teacher training just in order to kind of go to the source of yoga, especially as someone who is Western and white, who is here teaching that in the States. It was my intention to teach a little when I got back. I thought maybe if things went well, but it's funny because I had been looking at different intensive trainings. And really one of the reasons that I chose the one that I chose, Rishikesh Yoga Nirvana, was because they had their lead Ashtanga teacher, a female, Priyanka Karki. And I thought, I like the way that that feels. And there was something about this particular school that I kept going back to and I kept going back to and I kept going back to. So I chose this particular school because of their lead Ashtanga teacher, who was female, which is something that's actually pretty rare in that yoga teacher training community in Rishikesh. So I had actually wanted to go the month before and ended up coming in March just due to my work schedule. And I really do believe that that was all divinely guided because this experience would not have been the same if I had been there the month before. So yes, my intention was to go to learn yoga, to possibly teach when I came back, and also just to have a completely different experience.
I think it's really funny that you say that you're so lucky that this divine intervention happened. You know, you're so lucky that you got stuck during COVID in India. So tell me more about what those first pre-COVID, before kind of the ish hit the fan happened.
Ish hit the fan. Yeah, the ish did hit the fan.
The ish hit the fan.
The ish hit the fan.
The shan was hit. So what were those pre-COVID weeks like before it all kind of kicked off?
So for me, Pants and I arrived mid-February. We got a little apartment. I spent about a week getting familiar with the village and making my final decision on where I actually wanted to study, because I didn't make that final decision before we came to Rishikesh. I knew that was the community where I wanted to go, but I didn't know which school I was actually going to choose. And like Megan said, one of the big selling points for me was being able to find a female instructor. It really, really was. So Priyanka turned out to be one of the toughest teachers I've ever had in my life, but she was awesome. So anyway, I made my final decision on where I wanted to practice with Rishikesh Yoga Nirvana, and Pants stayed in this little apartment while I moved into an old hotel that had been converted into a yoga school just down the street. About 10 days or so after the yoga training started on March 1st was the Indian holiday of Holi. And some of you may know this as the Festival of Colors, when you go out and you throw the colored powder everywhere. It's so fun. So, of course, India couldn't shut down the country for this pandemic thing that I think we all knew was growing at the time, but they couldn't shut it down days before one of the biggest and most beloved festivals of the year.
Yeah, COVID was a big inconvenience at that point.
A big inconvenience at that point. That's a good way to say it. And so, fortunately for us, we were still able to celebrate Holi before the entire world sort of got flipped upside down. And Megan, if I remember correctly, you'd been to Mexico a few times prior to this trip to India, but this move to India was one of the first big, like, international, longer term trips that you had taken, right? Can you tell me more about some of your first experiences coming to India?
Yeah. So absolutely. That was my biggest trip that I have ever taken and still continues to be to this day. It's a massive trip from Georgia. When I got there, I was immediately ripped off at the airport because I think that's a rite of passage. I feel like if you're not getting ripped off at the airport, are you even really traveling? I took a 7-hour cab ride up to Rishikesh from the Delhi airport, and I was just kind of amazed
A
at
cab ride.
Yeah, I did that too.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
I took
Yeah.
That's
it's
a long cab
7 hours.
ride.
And of course the sun starts coming up and I'm like, oh my God, cows. And the guy's like, yeah, cows. Like that's the thing here.
We passed.
Your first Indian cows are always really exciting too.
I was so
Until they
excited.
start blocking the streets and then you can't get around them.
Right.
Like,
And then you're just like, oh, cows. So I got there a couple days before training started and stayed in a local hotel and tried to get myself kind of acclimated. I was taking long walks around Rishikesh, trying to figure out. I'm one of those people when I go someplace new, I need to get the lay of the land. Like I need to
Mm.
take a look around and I need to know where the things are. And then a couple days later, I moved into the yoga school. And then the next morning, I met Abby, which was wonderful. And I thought, this girl's way cooler than I am. I don't even know if we're going to be friends. I don't even know.
I
if
thought the
she's
same thing when I met Abby.
way too cool for me. I'm just,
And then surprise, she's not that cool.
yes, she is.
it's
Psych.
surprised neither of us are cool at all.
None of us are
We're not
cool.
very cool.
But yeah, I remember my first impressions of Abby. I was like, oh my God, she's so confident and well traveled. And I'm just and yeah, that was a monumental moment. But the moment that I knew we were going to be friends was about 3 days later when I was massively sick, just due to atmosphere and food and everything else. And Abby showed up with electrolytes and was like, I know what it's like to travel and be sick.
She knew what to do.
Absolutely. She's like, I know how this feels. And so I brought you this. And I was like, oh my God, the cool girl is being nice to me. That's so lovely.
Oh my God, I forgot all about that, actually.
didn't.
I didn't even remember that until you just said it.
I didn't.
It's really funny though. I feel like getting sick on your first big international travel is like a rite of passage. And it's not even, it's like the worst. But
Welcome to the club.
It is a welcome to the club. And,
Yeah.
you know, once you've been through it one time, you kind of are, I don't know, you know what to do the next time. And especially when your friends are hit with the same deli belly or whatever issue you've got going on.
Right.
So now you guys are here in town. You've met each other. Things were pretty kind of normal. You were experiencing cows, Indian cows, and the culture for the first time.
And
holy, like that must have been so magical. That's always been a dream of mine to experience Holi in India. I've been to India, but not during that time. So super jealous. What were sort of the first signs that things were kind of changing around town in India due to COVID? Were there masks or were people fleeing, or what was the first signs that you knew something was changing?
You could just start it to tell, because even in town, as we would go around, it was all Corona, Corona, Corona. You know, people were talking about that. You know, always Corona is Corona. They never called it COVID, always Corona.
It was always Corona. That's right. Corona.
And then, you know, we started to sort of notice, like, you know, people were not out as late at night and maybe starting to wear masks. And then Abby, I think, was the one who was like, you know, my students have been telling me this is what's happening in China.
That's right.
I knew.
And then she was also like, you might want to get some cash out. And I realized, so I go to get some cash out of the ATM, and I went to like 6 ATMs and couldn't get cash out. And that's when I was like, ooh, I think
she knows what she's talking
something's
about.
here. Right. And then one day, just in the middle of the day, one of the girls came to me that was in the school, and she's like, I'm leaving because they're shutting down the borders to Bali. And I was like,
What?
oh. And I was like, well, maybe that's a little bit overkill. I mean, what do I know?
Drama.
They started dropping over that next few days, a few people ended up leaving. And then, you know, of course, they announced the 1 day lockdown, which we knew was was so silly. Like they
I
were trying
knew
to
that
trick
was
us.
not gonna...
One day?
Yeah, that's
One
exactly what
day.
happened. So like Megan said, I had this weird kind of what felt like insider knowledge at the time because I was teaching students in China, and all of these kids were locked down in their homes. They're wearing masks around their parents. School is closed. Offices are closed. Like I knew it was coming before it had really spread to the rest of the world. And I distinctly remember when the Indian government said that they were going to do that like practice lockdown for a day or two.
Practice lockdown.
Really, truly. And I'm thinking, there is no way it's going to be a day or two. This is going to be a very substantial period of time, whether it's weeks, months, a year, 2 years. I knew something big was coming. I felt it. I just knew. So one of my first reactions to the 1 day lockdown trial run was, oh my God, I have got to get pants to pack up our apartment where he was still staying and move into this yoga school with me and all these girls who were there during training. And I remember having kind of some apprehension about that because there weren't any other men that was actually in our batch of students. It was all women. There were male teachers, but I remember thinking, what if these girls don't just want me to bring my boyfriend into this space? I remember talking with one of the yoga teachers, and he was a man, and he's like, you need to get your boyfriend here. If he needs to come, he's welcome. It's fine. So I think I did run it by the other women just to make sure everybody understood that Pants is harmless. Pants is community boyfriend.
We love
Everyone's boyfriend.
We love Pants. And
Yes.
and I knew that he could be safe and trustworthy and trusted in this very safe space that we had created. And he did. He became community boyfriend. So I remember calling him though, and he told me that he was fine. He's like, oh no, I'm just going to stay in this apartment. It'll just be a couple days. And you got to love Pants. But I knew from the jump that that was a bad idea. I was like, you got to get to this hotel with all of us girls. And he told me that he'd already gone shopping for food to get him by for a couple days. And I knew it was going to be weeks, like I said, if not months. And I remember asking him what he had shopped for. Like, how are you going to feed yourself for 2 days? And he told me, he said, oh, don't worry about it. I'm well stocked. I have everything I need. I've got bananas and potato chips.
Pants.
I was like, bro.
Pants.
Yes, Jesus Christ.
Pants, come on.
Pants.
It's not enough. That's Pants. It's not enough. So I remember all of us girls almost getting on speakerphone and like scolding him and shaming him into submission, where he finally moved into the yoga school with us, I think that very day. It ended up being this really wonderful kind of haven at the time. We had private rooms in this school that had been converted from a hotel. We would have a group of people to socialize with. We had a yoga studio. We had a beautiful outdoor rooftop. We had a chef that would provide 3 fresh meals
God, that
every
sounds so
day.
nice.
Yeah, it was like yoga sleepaway camp. Yeah, Chef Mike. It was amazing. It was awesome.
It sounds like the perfect retreat and also a really good way of keeping everybody safe at the same time.
It really was.
So I'm sure at this kind of pivotal moment, some hard decisions needed to be made. Should I stay? Should I go? What do we do? Obviously, you both decided to stay in India, or we would be at the end of our episode right now. So what factors did you weigh in order to make this decision?
So I knew that I would stay. Living abroad had been my normal way of life for probably up to 5 years at this point. Living abroad felt more familiar to me than it did trying to get back home to the States and live there during this pandemic thing. So I felt safe. I felt cared for at this yoga school. They assured me that staying as long as I needed to would not be a problem. They weren't going to kick us out. They were going to make sure that we had food. They were going to keep us fed, keep us safe, whatever. Also, unlike most governments at the time, the way I remember it, the United States provided zero assistance in getting us back to the USA. So, Megan, those were my memories of it. How do you remember it playing out for you?
Yeah, very similar, because I remember the other girls in the school and they were like, "Oh, the German government's sending us a plane. Oh, the Canadian government's sending a bus to take us to the plane." And I was like, I remember just kind of
They got
sitting.
their people out in
Yeah,
hours.
they did. And it was very easy to communicate with the embassy, where I felt like it was very, very challenging when I tried to chat with them. Because I was like, yeah, I think I need things to cross the state borders. And they were like, well, you'll have to figure that out there. And I was like, you do realize that like it's like a lockdown and I'm in the northern part of the country and I'm 7 hours in a cab ride away from where I would need to get home. So, I mean, part of it was I wasn't ready to leave. I was still soaking in the experience of being there. I had everything I needed. I had friends. Of course, Abby and Pants were one of the reasons that I decided to stay because they were experienced travelers and I felt very comfortable with them there. We had Manish, our favorite teacher, who was staying there. We had the food, we had the safety, and everyone in town assured us that we were the guest of India. We were the guest, and I cannot remember the phrase from the Gita that says that, but the guest is God. And I was reminded that over and over and over. And they were telling me, Madam, you do not need to go to the United States. Very, very dangerous there. Stay here forever, grow old with us.
Madam, you are welcome here.
Very welcoming place to be, a very safe place because of the strict lockdown protocols. When America finally came around with a repatriation flight, it was somewhere in the neighborhood $3,500 to get us home. And I was like, I'm just going to chill out for a minute. The only thing that gave me pause was the fact that I miss my cat so much, but she was home with her grandmother, and her grandparents. She was doing fine. So I was like, well, I'm just going to hang out here and see how things go. Surely it won't be more than a week or two or a month, maybe a month or two. It'll be fine.
2 years, baby.
Yeah.
Buckle up.
You guys are both so right on all of these marks, and especially that $3,500 repatriation flight. And that's if you can get to the plane.
Right.
Like, there's no help to get to the plane either. I experienced a similar thought process when I was in Vietnam. I was searching for a crystal ball to tell me what the best choice was. And I had my own decision deadline too. So I really felt the same way. The US was not safer at all, especially without insurance, because I had been living abroad for such a long time. So have you, that we didn't have the United States health insurance anymore. So if I did go back to this place where the US was the worst place in the world for COVID and I got it, SOL, right? Now, all these repatriation flights were also not what they seemed. There were a lot of promises about them. It was very strongly tied to politics at the time. There were all these things that were in the media saying that they were trying to help us, but it wasn't really the case. All of the politics and the pandemic back home was just a huge turnoff for me. So I opted out, just like you guys did, and you guys decided to stay. So what happened next?
Oh, so next we just got really good at COVID quarantine. But like I said, we were in a bubble. Like I had my homies there. We had people taking care of us. We had Chef Mike. We had Taj Bar, his assistant. We had Narendra.
Taj Bar and Narendra.
Who was also there working at the school. So we had everything that we needed there. And then it became time to really like settle into life in lockdown. We did a pretty good job of maintaining our yoga practices, trying to show up for that. But then also the days were long and our curfew was something like 11 a.m. in the morning. So we really couldn't be out after that. Now, caveat, there were many, many foreigners who ended up staying who were blatantly like going out and taking walks and doing things and not wearing masks. And we did not subscribe to that. We were very much in accordance with what India asked us to do. And as their guests, that's what we decided to do. We spent a lot of time entertaining ourselves. And thank goodness for our teacher, Manish, who provided not only the comic relief, but Abby and I are both big sisters. And we both needed a little brother to like
Pick on.
harass and pick on. And boy, did we just have the greatest little guy for that. Manish is an incredible yoga teacher, very, very knowledge, very experienced, and just an amazing teacher. And then on the other hand is just the best little buddy and like best little brother that you could ever have. I sometimes will go back and see the memories from that time of us keeping ourselves entertained. We did everything from making art and doing yoga practice to literally like one time we made Pants close his eyes and we touched things to his finger and made him guess what they were. And I can't even tell you how entertaining that was because Pants is hilarious, of course. We have videos of us slow motion slapping each other. Like we watched movies. We explained things to Manish.
Yeah, we told him like what some dirty things were because he was so innocent and sweet. We told him like dirty things.
With some dirty things where that he had no idea.
We made him say bad words.
We did.
Manish is iconic. I've heard so many stories about this man. I need to meet him.
And we had one beautiful Thai angel, Tanadra, who was there with us, who was able to make us prison wine.
Yeah.
Prison wine.
Like, oh, because we had nothing. We had no access to restaurants, to the wine
Sure.
shops, to anything. So we didn't have anything. And I will tell you, the very first time we tried that wine that she made, it turned into a full dance party, Whitney Houston dance party
right?
on our rooftop. Like, Manish is like, every time we played, I want to dance with somebody. He's like, oh, that is that song I love. So like, we played it quite a lot.
It was really sneaky prison wine too, because I remember Tanadra, she's Thai and she's from the mountains up north, and she was just the quietest little house mouse. But she discovered that I could at least say some basic greetings in Thai. So we kind of hit it off in the beginning, and she had explained to me how in Thailand, this is into the lockdown at this point, how she could brew beer. And I'm like, what? You can
Genius.
You know how you can make alcohol? And she said, yeah, I can make wine if you want wine. And we're all like salivating. Yes, please. So she made us prison wine, and it was deceptively delicious.
It was.
Once it was ready to go, we kind of pounded it. Like we drank all of it.
So all of this prison wine in a yoga school is really funny, but I have been instructed to ask about Asbestos Beach.
Do you remember Asbestos Beach?
Well, Abby and I both love the beach. So we created a little beach. So on our rooftop around the corner from our shala, we had like a little private area that was just filled with a bunch of junk.
Scrap metal.
Our school just kind of had just like hidden junk over there. So we took a couple of days to go and clear the junk out to move the things around. And then there was this big like layer of dust on everything. And we're like, oh, it's like sand. But
you
we're
know
like,
that's
no,
asbestos.
this is asbestos. This is not going to work out well for us. But whenever we would go over there, you could see the mountains from Asbestos Beach. So we like to go over there and, go to the beach. It was like a little private area because, in the grand scheme, we had our own rooms and everything, but there wasn't a lot of other private space for you to be. So that was like kind of our little beach getaway. And Abby and I would sit up there and have coffee in the mornings and stuff sometimes and just kind of watch the town wake up.
This is making lemonade out of lemons for sure.
We made prison wine out of lemons.
Wine out of a toilet. Yeah, for sure.
We made prison wine.
We had an incredible time. Like we really were able to entertain ourselves because I don't know, for those who've never been to India, it's like not there is no TV. The internet's not super reliable. Your power's not super reliable. Your water's not super reliable. Like it forces you to be very present, and it forces you to really be in connection to the people that are around you, which is why this particular experience, I think for me, was so profound because it really did require presence. And isn't that a beautiful thing to gain?
And to be adaptable too.
It was weird how we had so much fun and such a great experience in this little COVID bubble, because for me, it almost came with this weird sense of guilt a little bit too. The entire world was going through something so traumatic. Like people were losing their family and their friends, and people were getting sick, and people were losing jobs and all of these things. And here we were drinking prison wine and dancing on the rooftop and laughing our way through a yoga sleepaway camp. It felt a little unfair, but what an opportunity we had to kind of honor and appreciate the situation that we were in. It really worked out as best as it could have. I mean, it was just sort of incredible. About 3 months into this sleepaway camp that we were experiencing in our bubble, a lot of the other girls had started to head home at this point. And like we talked about before, most countries really did scoop their people up pretty quickly. But the last ones to go home was Canada, the UK, And dead last, no question, was the United States. So at this point into COVID, most of the people had left this yoga school, and some of these restrictions in Rishikesh were starting to relax a little bit. Pants and I knew that we would continue living abroad because that's just what we knew how to do. That was our life. So we decided it was time to maybe get an apartment in Rishikesh and let the staff at the yoga school get home and get some much deserved time away from us and like see their people.
They were babysitting.
They were, and they just moved in to take care of us. That's really what they do. So again, living abroad was nothing new for Pants and me, but Megan, how do you remember your experience when we were deciding to leave the yoga school? Because you didn't have plans to go home yet. You were still just there.
I was still just there. And I remember Manish kind of looking really homesick one day because bless his heart, he came to stay with us during that first part of lockdown. He had never lived away from home before. He lives with his family. The Thopwells are lovely. He really got that experience, but I knew that he was missing that. And we had decided, like, we felt like it had come to the end of a cycle. And this is another time where the local community really came in because I called my friend Sweet Sonu and I said, hey, we're looking for a place and these are kind of the parameters that we want and all of this stuff. And he's like, yeah, I'll look around. I'll get back to you. Like 11 minutes later, he's like, this is where you'll go to. This is who you'll speak to. This is what you're seeing. And this is how it's going to work out.
Oh my God.
It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom apartment with a living room and a kitchen. Here you go.
Right.
I mean, it was just incredible.
And a balcony that you could see all the way down to Ganga. It was a beautiful apartment. It had an elevator. Like, you don't even know how
it had air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
Those things are not common in India.
So, it was just
it had a yoga studio. It had a yoga studio on the rooftop.
And a yoga shala up
amazing.
On the rooftop. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it was really a nice apartment. And I mean, even the bathrooms were upgraded. It was lovely, but it was just another indication of how well we were taken care of by our community there and, how valued we felt. It was no problem. And I think we moved within the next day or two. We moved out of the hotel and over into the new place, which was a lot of fun, actually, kind of setting up this apartment. And I have not had roommates since college.
I know.
So I was like, oh, I hope that I love living with Abby and Pants. And of course I did, because I love them so much. They are my family. They are my homies. They are the best.
We found this little apartment and she was like, can I live with you guys? And we're like, yeah.
Obviously.
I mean, it was like a no-brainer. We're like,
We were moving and I was like, well, I could go to another guest house or something like that. But it was like, also, I'm like, I had been next to Abby since basically the day that I got there. And I was like, we're not stopping this anytime soon. And it actually ended up being really lovely. Of course, we realized then that we had to feed ourselves 3 times a day. We didn't have chef anymore, which was a hoot.
We lost a chef.
We got very adept at making tofu tacos and all of our favorite things. The apartment itself came with like this whole like new community of people to meet. So we got to meet the people that were living there. There were other Americans that were living there. There were some local people who were living there. And then maybe a month into our stay there, the boys downstairs found this little monkey.
Oh yeah. We got to live with a monkey for like months.
And he was about this tall and they named him Ramu. And he was the absolute cutest, most adorable thing I've ever seen. Like Abby and I were 100% obsessed with that and getting to see him every time. I think we were on like the 5th floor, so we had to walk up. So every time I'd walk up, I'd look over at the door to see if Ramu was there.
Where's Ramu?
Do you remember we'd call him Ramu?
Ramu!
And you could hear him up there on the 4th, 5th floor.
He'd be,
Oh my God.
And I'd run up and I'd share Roma tomatoes with him. Like he loved eating tomatoes. And I'm like, I'll bring you all the tomatoes you can handle. Ramu was my man. I love that little monkey.
Yeah, he was the best. And then, of course, like we had our teachers and our local friends would come and visit us at the apartment as the restrictions grew a little bit different. We even had a 4th of July party, which was a massive success. Like I was like, this is an America party. And they're like, okay.
We had an America party. We showed all the Indian boys how to listen to Bon Jovi.
Yes. We played beer pong. Yeah. I don't even think we had beer, but I think we played beer pong and we played flip cup and we taught them all of the games and everything. It was so we danced. it was a lot of fun.
It was a lot of fun.
We had a really great time. And especially because like we were just kind of in the groove of being like, we don't know what's going to happen, but we're just here. And I know that it will shift eventually. And of course it has, but it was a really beautiful time.
Yeah, it was. And I really remember getting so close with you. And for the first time in a while, I had a girlfriend. I had a gal pal, because up to that point, I had spent a lot of time just with Pants. It was just the two of us. And it was so fun having a new friend. And I remember as some of the restrictions kind of let up a little bit, there was still no movement between cities or other communities within the states within India. So our little village of Rishikesh didn't have COVID. So the cafes could open, the restaurants could open, the shops could open. Everything was really normal all of a sudden. And there was no tourism. It wasn't crowded. There were no people. So I remember Megan and we would spend a lot of time together taking walks. We'd go to the cafes. We'd go get a cappuccino in the morning. We'd go to the little markets and kind of shop for incense and oil and whatever we wanted to. And Megan, I wonder if you remember going into the shop, if you remember this. Excuse me, madam, but do you know what is gangster rap?
Madam, what is gangster rap? I was like, friend, I am from California. I was like, I am from where they invented the gangster rap. He's like, yeah, so you have heard. And I'm like, yes, so I have heard.
You have heard. We walked into this little shop and this young Indian kid, he's playing, I don't know, it was like Tupac or something. And we're like, hey, cool. Yeah. We're like, cool jams, bro. And he looked at us both and he's like, but madams, do you know what is gangster rap? And we're like, homie, yeah, we know what it is. we got it.
We're millennials. You don't need to proselytize rap music to us. We're
right.
we're subscribers.
We got it. Oh, it was fun though.
Oh my God. I'll be honest, those first days they sounded perfect, honestly. Sounded like a dream scenario. You have this new family, you've got food, fellowship through yoga, but y'all know that a lot of good things, they kind of come to an end. So how did this dream scenario kind of turn into a reality check?
It was, I think, about August when I decided that there was only so much that I could still do in India. Because I mean, the days were honestly, as much fun as we were having, the days were long. I wasn't working. I was mostly just doing my practice and hanging out with Abby and Pants. But I had intentions of being home after about 8 weeks. And it had been, 8 months or whatever, 6 months at that point.
Yeah, 6 months.
And so it was a lot easier than to get to the airport, to cross the state borders. Everything was a lot more relaxed. I did some digging and I still couldn't fly to the United States, like through a United States flight, but I was able to get on with a French repatriation flight, which took me to Paris so I could come home. I mean, I wouldn't say that I missed my cat. I was very excited to see my cat. I was excited to, check in with my family and all of those things that come along with coming home. But it was also a really sad time. I wasn't necessarily ready to go. And honestly, if Cleopatra, my kitty, was not in the picture, I might never have left. I might have just stayed even a little bit longer. So I had mixed emotions about coming home, but I also had this deep inner knowing, this is the time to make that transition. I kind of decided to do that. I had finished another training while I was there. I did Abhyanga Ayurveda massage and I had just finished that up. And I was like, it just kind of felt like the completion point had come there for me in my time there.
Yeah.
So then I packed my things up and they put me in a cab and sent me on my way.
Were you still living in India when things the fit hit the shan for real in India, or you left kind of just before that happened?
I left before that because I feel like, of course, Abby and I have been in touch ever since, but I feel like things got really weird a few months later. So I feel like I kind of left at the right time, if there is a right time for that.
Window.
But I left in a window where things were comfortable enough to get out of there easily. Like I said, I really operate on the divine guidance path. And I really felt like I was guided to leave at that point.
Yeah, I remember when you left, I left quite a while after you did. But when you were leaving, things were opening up. Things were feeling pretty good. There was a lot of optimism in the country. country as far as COVID was concerned. So after you had left, Pants and I did some really cool things. Like things really started to open up. We took motorbike trips to some of these amazing temples. We did a bunch of trekking. We went to the Taj Mahal. We went and traveled around our state of Uttarakhand, which was just incredible. But I remember toward the end of the year, maybe even into January of the next year, 2021, the prime minister, I think it was, or maybe it was even a local politician or somebody got on TV and they said something about how we can declare victory over corona. And they had not even started administering vaccinations in this country yet. Not one Indian person had a vaccine yet. And he said, we have victory over corona. So now let's practice a little cautious optimism. You can go back to having festivals, weddings, funerals, gatherings, holidays, whatever, political rallies. I think that was a big part of it. But let's try to keep the group size to a very manageable and a maximum of like 500 people. Small groups only, small gatherings.
Small gatherings.
Tiny group of 500.
Yeah. And as soon as that announcement was made, the country just exploded. There were religious pilgrimages of literally millions of people, not like a couple hundred, like millions of people were traveling all across the country to go visit this river or to go visit that temple or do whatever they wanted to do. And things did kind of change. For the first time, COVID was coming to Rishikesh. Our landlord, his best friend, died. And it started to get pretty serious. And that was when you started seeing...
I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's when you started seeing, like, not to be kind of gruesome, but it's a tradition there, when you started to see the burning bodies floating down the river. And you started to see these open funeral services that for the first time were happening in Rishikesh. So after you had gone, this was probably April of 2021. It was a while after you had left. And then it started to feel like, okay, now the US has the vaccine. India does not, because they gave all their vaccination materials to Canada and the United States. So it started to feel like maybe it was time for us to get moving again. Yeah. So I left.
You decided to go home. At that point, the better choice was the United States. You left in June?
June? Yeah, I left in June of 2021.
Right. When you came back to the United States, did your brain have any idea what you had gone through? Like, were you still actually unpacking, like, all of what had happened for that year or whatever? Like, Megan, what was your first impression getting back home and just downloading, like, what you had just been through?
Well, I mean, I was coming from yoga sleepaway camp that just kind of got extended through the summer, and like living with my homies and like eating fresh fruit and taking walks every day. And I came back to an absolute political storm.
Hellscape.
Storm. I was in a really fantastic place, like spiritually, emotionally, and physically. And it was shocking to my system to come back. Everybody else had been used to COVID in the US for about 6 months or 7 months or whatever at that time. And I was
People were angry.
And I was like, whoa, like there was a marked difference in the way that the community felt. Like the people where everybody was at each other's throats. It was a very intense time to come home to, and also sort of just kind of processing out of this kind of Indian mindset where, like I said, you know, nothing was reliable. There was no TV. There were very little advertisements. There was no violence, so to speak. I mean, even the cops that were enforcing, you know, don't go this way, they had sticks that they might hit you with, but you know, I came back.
Yeah, they'd whack you with bamboo.
Right. Like they'd whack you with bamboo. They might chase you down or something. But, you know, I came back and I was like, I had not seen a gun in months. You know, like I had not.
No.
I came back to Georgia during that time, and it was a political storm, widely varying points of view. Of course, they were getting ready for the vaccinations. I think that they ended up coming out right after the first of the year. But, you know, my biggest concern at that point was because I was making a transition to Florida to be closer to my grandparents. And I was trying not to hand off COVID to any of my elderly family members, you know, so I came back to feeling really, really isolated again.
Yeah.
And also being really concerned about the seriousness that it was taken. You know, in India, we had up for a very long time, we had curfew from 11 to 3, finally till like 7, then to like 9, you know, but I think by the time I left, we were able to stay out till 9 o'clock at night. But many places in the United States had never, ever done anything remotely close to that. And then I moved to Florida where I don't even know if they know that all of this happened, if I'm being completely honest.
I remember there was something like there was this weird division in the United States and a lot of bad information being swirled around that was very politically motivated in regards to COVID. And I remember around the time that Megan was leaving, I got a phone call from a person that I know back home who is a very, very politically liberal person, but they happen to live in a very, very red community, a very, very conservative community. And at this time, it was Trump who was our president. And this person said to me, I think you guys should think about coming home. What's going on with the flights? And I explained to her what Megan said, that the repatriation flights were $3,500 per person, and they were only out of Delhi and Mumbai, which was a 7-hour taxi ride away from where we were living. And then those repatriation flights only went to, I think, Newark, New Jersey and San Francisco.
Yeah.
And Pance's family is in Arizona and my family is in Iowa. So what do we do in New Jersey? Get a hotel for $300 a night? It was crazy. So this person who called me and was telling me about this, she said, it's so interesting that that's the information that you're giving me, because all of these red folks, all of these MAGA folks in my community are saying, well, why don't Abby and Pants just come home? Trump is flying everyone home all over the world for free.
This was the propaganda at the
and
time.
I was like, that could not be further from what was really going on.
Well,
so it was crazy.
Everything was politicized. Every single thing. I was so disappointed in all of that because it is a universal healthcare emergency and everything became political, from wearing a mask and injections and all that. So it's not about MAGA or liberal. It has nothing to do with political parties. It was just the propaganda around what was offered to us out in the world as international native
international U.S. citizens.
International U.S. citizens was not the reality whatsoever.
It would have cost like $10,000 for Adam and I to get home. Crazy.
It was not, and my cats would have not been able to come with me. There were so many barriers.
A lot of people, they say, oh, when I tell them where I was during COVID, they say, so you were stuck in India during COVID? And I hate that they use the word stuck, because I made a very, very specific and conscious choice to stay in India. I was welcomed in India. I was not stuck there. I was received. I was cared for. I had friends. I had a community. I had things to do. I had a peaceful life. I had a life that I could afford. It was a pretty great situation.
It was
so
perfect
I really, really cherish all of the memories that I took from my time in COVID India. It was a really important time for me.
A key word for me there was community. And I feel like if we were to have gone home, community just wasn't a thing at that time. It was each man for themselves, and a lot of infighting and families not speaking to each other. And it was a very opposite experience for me to be in Vietnam. I also had a little COVID community bubble, which we'll talk about later. But one thing that I did want to kind of touch on that I think is really special, I know this, but not everybody knows this, that a real friendship group remained after you guys came home or you went your separate ways. I know that you have a very active group chat, and there was also a group vacation at some point, right?
Yeah, Corona reunion.
Corona reunion, baby.
Yes.
So it was really cool.
Obviously, I'm obsessed with Abby. She's one of my closest, dearest, bestest friends of all time.
Likewise.
So, I mean, like, we always joke. She jokes. She's like, I spent so much time abroad that it's rare for me to find someone who speaks American English. And she's like, but we don't even just speak American English. We actually speak the same language. And I totally know what she means.
We speak
by
our
that.
own language.
We would talk so fast together. We would be in there just so excited about something, and everybody's literally staring at us like, watch the Americans go crazy here while they're talking.
Yeah,
but yes,
guilty.
There's a group of about 6 of us that have stayed in really close touch, to the point that we know where everybody is, what everybody's doing, what everybody's going through. And so we've managed to keep that going for about 4 years. And then in 2022, a couple years ago,
about a year later,
we went to Turkey together. So we had friends from England and Canada and Italy, and we all descended on Istanbul. And Abby planned an incredible trip for us to go throughout Turkey. I think we were there about 3 weeks. It was amazing.
It was really a touching thing, even for me, because here I was living in Istanbul. I had made these connections with these women that I was just in awe of. Like this group of girls that found each other in India, they blow my mind. They're so interesting, they're cool, they're smart, they're funny, they're fun to be with, they're good friends, they're supportive. They're just kind of down ass bitches, right? Like it's just a great group of girls that we walked away from this experience with. Here I was living, like I said, in Istanbul with pants and 3 Turkish men as my roommates. And then all of a sudden, these girls were all down to come and visit me from this yoga school that I had met in India, who I never thought I was the caliber of cool enough to like actually see these girls maybe ever again. I don't even know if that makes sense or if it sounds crazy,
No,
but
it doesn't make sense. You're ridiculous.
Shut up.
She's got dysmorphia. Don't pay her any mind.
Everybody, don't listen to her.
This is my podcast, okay? Just kidding. So anyway, so here come all these girls, and they had traveled from all over the world to trust me with their vacation, with this big trip kind of a lifetime to Turkey. And it was incredible sort of seeing my worlds collide. I had all of these girls from all over the world that I'd known in India. Here they were having raka with my Turkish roommates in Istanbul, and it was just incredible. It was a wild experience.
So that's actually one of my favorite things about this kind of a lifestyle. It's the real friendships that form in the most unlikely of places, especially when you're bonding through shared experiences like yoga or COVID or running or whatever it is that you're passionate about. So my question to you is, do either of you girls teach yoga now?
So I don't teach yoga. I practice on my own. Again, that was one of the reasons that I did this training, is because selfishly, I wanted to have a deepening in my own practice. So I really never moved forward with actually teaching, but Megan does. And she is a healer and wellness extraordinaire. So Megan, I am in awe of you. I think you're incredible. I think you do the most. I think you do it the best. I think that you are just an absolute inspiration. So please tell us about all of these amazing things that you do, because I can't even keep track of how much you offer to the world.
Oh my gosh, you are just the sweetest, cutest, kindest. Well, I do. I've been teaching since I got back. A post-COVID yoga teaching experience was quite a lot to come back to. A lot of the studios were shut down, so it did take quite a bit of grit to kind of get that going. But I've been teaching now for about 4 years. I'm actually located right now in the studio where I currently teach. This is called the Sound Awake Collective, and we're located in Newberry, Florida. So I teach regular yoga classes. I teach vinyasa style. I teach restorative. I even teach aerial yoga. I got several certifications since I came back. I am a certified yoga for all teacher. So I teach accessible yoga. I teach yin yoga. And since then, I've also gone and I've done Pilates teacher training. So I'm a comprehensive Pilates teacher as well. And really one of my biggest passions is teaching Reiki. I'm a Reiki master teacher. I've been practicing Reiki for several years now, for about 5 years. And so I'm currently teaching and integrating that into all of these practices. So this is very much a lifestyle that I'm planning to continue. This has been, sort of my midlife crisis has been to come into this to leave
it's your baby.
Is to come into to leave the corporate world behind and come into this world. And absolutely, I don't think that without the experience of being in India for so long, being able to dedicate so much time to practice, so much time to stillness, so much time to quiet, that I might have gotten to where I am here, because it was sort of one of those things of, well, maybe I'll teach, maybe I won't. I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it, but this and that and this and that and whatever. But I've been teaching consistently. In fact, I've got classes tonight. So yeah, if any of you are over in Newberry, Florida, go ahead and stop in and take some classes with me.
I think that if that's what your midlife crisis looks like,
That's a good crisis.
I'm a little bit embarrassed. I have a lot to live up to. So
I have a lot of embarrassing things I also do in my midlife crisis, but I don't think they're appropriate for the podcast.
That's for next time.
Yeah, so Megan is incredible. I am proud to keep her as my own personal friend, only my friend. She belongs to me. She is mine. No one can have her but me.
Yeah,
so
hands off.
I'm joking. But if anyone finds themselves in Florida, check out Megan's class. She is amazing. I would also like to take this opportunity to give one more shout out to our incredible yoga school. We had such an outstanding experience with some of the most knowledgeable and gifted yoga instructors that I have ever practiced with. I cannot say enough good things about them. So if anyone is interested in learning more about their program, they have a very active Instagram page. You can find them at Rishikesh Yog Nirvana, or you can check out their website at rishikeshyogNirvana.com.
Also, as always, we do add some bonus features on our website at she'sgotbaggagepodcast.com. We are trying to maintain a little bit of an active blog, which will have all of the links to both Megan and to this yoga studio in Rishikesh. So if you are interested in more information, then feel free to make your way to our website. And while you're there, say hi, join our Buddy Pass. So, girls, I had a really good time today hearing about this story from the both of you. Thank you so much to Megan. Thank you for telling your story and for being here and sharing your energy with us. It's been an amazing experience. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me. It's been so fun to walk down memory lane, especially remembering things with Abby. So yeah, just a lovely experience. So glad you girls are doing this. What a fun idea.
Well, yes, Megan, thank you also from me for joining us today. You know, I think you're the best. Today was really fun experience for me. I know what my memories of our COVID story look like in my head, but you've always had such a great memory, and hearing your version of things really did unlock some old memories for me too. So that was really cool. I am not so good at getting into the mushy stuff, but the universe really gave me such a strange, almost masked opportunity to meet you girls who totally changed my life and injected, like I said before, so much incredible feminine energy into a space I think that I needed, right? This energy that I needed. So I cherish these memories in a big way. And I cherish the friendship that I have with the both of you, Megan and Katy. So Megan, your energy and your positivity is so infectious and overwhelming and also very obnoxious and irritating and wonderful and perfect and beautiful and irreplaceable in my life. So I wanted to thank you for, for the space that you hold in my life.
Honey, there is no one I would rather annoy and be obnoxious to than you. You know that. You know that's my love.
You drive me crazy. So our story, it may be a little unusual, but the bottom line is that our community is the reason that we stayed safe and sane during that time. So thank you to everyone from our yoga gurus, our instructors, our teachers, to our other COVID kind of bubble girls for being a huge part of our lives during that time. Please check back in with us next time, where you're going to hear more about how Katy and her very special guest, Mandy, will tell us how Vietnam, animals, lockdowns, and libations found themselves taking the ultimate challenge of relocating to another country during a pandemic, from spreadsheets to reality.
Be sure to check in next time to hear a story that is needed to be told for a really long time. If any of our listeners have a unique story-worthy tale about your experiences during COVID, please sure to let us know so we can feature you. So thank you so much to everybody for sticking with us today. We hope that you had a lot of takeaways from today's episode.
It was a long one, but thank you from me also for sticking with us. And I think that is a wrap for today's episode of She's Got Baggage. Until next time, I'm Abby.
And I'm Katy. Thoughts and taters. Bye.
I will make a big thing.
Thanks for joining us on She's Got Baggage, the podcast where we depart into the travel world that has embraced us for the past 9 years. We invite you to continue exploring with us, from tales that stir your thoughts to moments that tickle your funny bone and tug at your heartstrings. Our itinerary promises to inspire and captivate.
Don't forget to secure your buddy pass by subscribing, ensuring you never miss our next adventure. Your feedback and reviews are always appreciated as we continue to navigate these unexplored territories together. Your reviews are so important so that we can stay on course with content that keeps you coming back for a return trip. Until next time,
I'm Abby.
and I'm Katy. For additional perks, check us out on she'sgotbaggagepodcast.com. And you can also find us on social media.
And remember that this has been She's Got Baggage, where every adventure has a story.